Today I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about herbs. In this video you will learn how to handle herbs with finesse, from choosing the right herbs to having an unlimited supply using a cup of water. I'm going to reveal the secrets of various preparations methods, including drying, infusing, making your own salt and even butter. And by the end of this video you will be a herb aficionado for life. First and foremost, let's talk about what makes a great herb. It all boils down to one word: balance. When it comes to herbs, balance hinges on two key factors: flavor and aroma. These elements will impact your final dish, whether you're aiming for the aromatic delight of fresh herbs or the rich, concentrated essence of dried ones. This is why it's so important to grow your own or get them as fresh as you can. Now imagine yourself standing in front of an array of herbs. It's like holding a palette of colors ready to paint a culinary masterpiece. However, not all herbs grow all year round. For example, in UK and Europe, we can get basil growing for a limited time before the frost kill the plant. Due to these extreme weather changes across the world, people came up with some really cool tricks to preserve herbs. I love digging deep to the roots of pretty much anything I do. Obviously, don't do that in your garden. And this is when my hunger for knowledge came in, and I just had to find out more about who actually started preserving herbs and how did they come up with all these different methods. So I started researching online and found out some really cool things about one of the best civilizations ever appeared on Earth: Egyptians. Egypt is obviously very dry, and it just makes sense that in ancient Egypt, the preservation of herbs was essential due to the region's climate. But they didn't have any fancy tool like this dehydrator. So the most common method was drying herbs in the sun. Pretty much what my grandpa used to make in his garden. Yep, that's me on my grandpa's lap a couple of tattoo sessions ago. Anyway, back to the herbs, which I'll pick from my garden, and in this case I decided to go with rosemary and sage. Now let's pick up the dehydrator. That is actually an amazing tool to have in the kitchen. The energy consumption is extremely low, and you just slowly dry herbs to preserve the flavor and all the aromas. So you can store them in jars and have a nice visually appealing pantry like ours. If I fall, it's your fault. You can get a decent dehydrator for about 40 bucks. I had mine for about 5 years, but they're not paying me to promote it. Mine has 6 layers, so I can pack it with herbs, and you can set different temperatures and times and wait till they're dry at the touch. Set the lowest temperature just so you don't over dry the herbs and end up with a bitter taste. You can store them in jars, use them as is, or even infuse it with your favorite oil to use for massage or in the kitchen. But I'm sure the majority of you is already thinking,
I don't have one, and I certainly don't want another extra tool in the kitchen.
Well, you could use your oven at the lowest setting, but if not, don't worry, I got you. Honestly, this is my favorite method because we end up cooking almost every day using this thing, which looks like an ice cube, but it's actually an herb bomb. You can pick a mix of different herbs from the garden, chop them down finely with this cool transition, or simply using a knife like I did off camera. You can even add other ingredients like garlic or nasturtium flowers for a punchy, peppery flavor. Add 1 teaspoon to each hole of an ice cube tray and cover with olive oil. But leave a tiny bit of gap from the rim so they don't overflow once frozen. Now freeze them and use at any time you start to cook something to literally add an explosion of flavor. My favorite thing is on roasted potatoes, but you can use it on anything like sofrito and it lasts for months in your freezer. Now think about this: the most delicate tasting spread, packing a punch of flavor to smear over a nice toasted slice of bread and slowly melting over it. This is what I'm talking about. I simply picked fresh rosemary, sage and basil from the garden, or you can buy them from the store, chop them down and leave on side. In the meantime, take out your butter from the fridge and leave it at room temperature so it softens up. I use plant-based butter, but you can use any butter to make this. I added a bit of lemon zest to it and mixed all the other ingredients to a bowl until fully incorporated. You can now transfer it to a piece of parchment paper or add it to some compostable cling film. Roll it tightly and store in the fridge until solid. You can slice it up and use it like normal butter on literally anything. The next method is probably the easiest and widely used to preserve herbs. And it all comes down to a simple ingredient: salt. I decided to use coarse salt for this recipe, but if you can't get it, even rock salt could work. I tend to use one single herb per batch so I can make different flavoring, but it's entirely up to you. You can use fresh or dried herbs depending on what you have. And the best part is that you don't even have to cut them. Add the herbs straight to the blender. If you use woody herbs, remove the stem. And blend until you achieve a texture you like. You can then add the salt and pulse a few times until fully incorporated. Tip the entire mix into a baking tray and leave it to dry at room temperature in a well-ventilated area, near a window if possible. To speed up the process, you can dry in the oven 230 Fahrenheit or 110 centigrade. The time will vary depending on the herbs you use. I suggest paying attention between 30-40 minutes marks and then increasing time as needed until dry at the touch. You can store it in jars, and the cool thing is it gets better with age. We made loads of different combinations, and I'll leave a few recipes in the description. And finally, did you ever hear about cloning herbs? Yes, even store-bought herbs could be used just by using your windowsill. Simply keep a few stems of almost any herb you buy, clean the bottom part, removing the lower leaves, and add the stem in a cup of fresh tap water. Replace the water every 2-3 days. You can pot up your plants in small containers and create something like we did for a constant supply of herbs. But if you really want to learn how to grow your own plants, you must check this video where I share 10 gardening tips which literally changed my life.